One person is in custody, and an investigation is underway following an incident that caused property damage at the Ohio residence of Vice President JD Vance. The Vance family was not in Ohio at the time of the incident, according to the U.S. Secret Service and a spokesperson for the Vice President. Photos showed damage to the windows of the residence. A Secret Service spokesperson said an adult male, who has not been identified, was detained for causing property damage, including breaking windows on the exterior of a personal residence associated with Vance. The incident happened shortly after midnight and comes amid increased concern over political violence following the fatal shooting in September of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and the killing of Minnesota state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in June. U.S. Vice President JD Vance said a crazy person had tried to break into his Ohio home by hammering on the windows, noting he and his family were not there at the time.
As far as I can tell, a crazy person tried to break in by hammering the windows. I'm grateful to the Secret Service and the Cincinnati police for responding quickly, Vance said in a post on X.
For that courtesy. At the outset, I want to recognize law enforcement who are here today, including those who defended the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and the family members of those who are no longer with us. Ken Sicknick, brother of fallen officer Brian Sicknick, is here. He reminds us, and I quote, "The simple act of not letting the events of that day be whitewashed, revised, or forgotten is more important than anyone can ever know." That statement by Mr. Sicknick rings true, painfully true today. This hearing examines a critical issue, political violence in America. I've said before over and over from this podium and will repeat, violence is not acceptable whatever the source or origin. I do not believe that one party owns the right to say it's the other party's fault. It is the fault of both parties in differing degrees. And it's our fault if we try to whitewash that reality. To seriously address this problem, we must be honest. We must start with the facts, not with partisan conclusions. To claim, as the chairman of the subcommittee has, and I quote, "Political violence comes predominantly from one side of the aisle, and don't give me this both sides BS," is not supported by the facts. In fact, those facts tell a different story. For more than a decade, data from the FBI, DHS, and nonpartisan experts show that far-right extremists have been responsible for most domestic terrorism, including most deaths by far. On this chart, which you can see behind me, from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, also known as CSIS, terrorist attacks from the right are in red and attacks from the left are in blue. CSIS found that since 2016, 112 people have been killed as a result of right-wing attacks, while 3 have died as a result of left-wing attacks. These are not partisan talking points. They are the facts established by federal law enforcement and national security experts across numerous administrations, both Democratic and Republican. Indeed, one of today's majority witnesses, Mr. Chad Wolf, in his confirmation hearing before Congress, as acting DHS Secretary during President Trump's first term, testified, and I quote, "White supremacist extremists, from a lethality standpoint over the last 2 years, are certainly the most persistent and lethal threat when we talk about domestic violent extremists. Far-right extremists were responsible for the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. I lived through it. And they've been responsible for a string of hate-fueled massacres targeting ethnic and religious minority communities, including the 2012 Gurdwara shooting in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, targeting Sikh Americans, killing 7. The 2015 Mother Emanuel AME Church shooting in Charleston, targeting Black Americans, killing 9. The 2018 Tree of Life Synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, targeting Jewish Americans, killing 11. The 2019 Walmart shooting in El Paso, targeting Latino Americans, killing 22. And the 2022 Tops supermarket shooting in Buffalo, targeting Black Americans, killing 10. Political violence has continued to rock the nation in recent months, from the assassination of Mr. Kirk to the assassinations of Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted assassination of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Just last week, a man was arrested after allegedly offering $45,000 for the killing of Attorney General Pam Bondi, and a January 6 rioter who was pardoned by President Trump, full and unconditional pardon, was arrested for allegedly threatening to kill the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's no room for political violence in America, ever, ever, not from the right or from the left. I'm deeply concerned by the Trump administration's response to the political violence crisis. On the one hand, the administration is threatening a crackdown on constitutionally protected speech based on false claims that, in the words of Stephen Miller, there is, quote, a vast domestic terror movement on the left. At the same time, the administration is gutting programs that have proven effective in combating domestic terrorism. For example, the administration has slashed the budget of DHS's Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships by more than 30%, cut the center staff by 80 employees to fewer than 20, and appointed a 22-year-old Trump campaign official to run the center. We honor our Constitution and serve our country not by rewriting history or weaponizing tragedy, but by telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, because democracy cannot survive selective outrage or deliberate amnesia. To the officers and families here today and watching at home, we will never forget January 6th. Our duty is to protect the truth, to defend the rule of law, and to be an American that rejects violence in every form. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I want to point out that the CSIS study that's been mentioned here and repeated ad nauseum excluded violence at protests from their study, allowing them to systematically ignore Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots. But they did make an exception for Charlottesville, interestingly. Even using their flawed methodology, CSIS recently reported that left-wing violence in 2025 outpaces right-wing violence. Imagine how much bigger that disparity would be if they actually weren't cooking the books. So without objection, I move to enter into the record an article by Tim Carney explaining CIS's biased methodology. Without objection, it'll be entered into the record. We'll start with questionings. Mr. Knowles, I want to start with you. You're not going to have any bigger proponent of free speech than me, given especially what I did in my last job and this one. I believe in it wholeheartedly. I think it's the First Amendment is the beating heart of our Constitution. But what we're really talking about here is conduct, of course, violent conduct. And you've talked about you can't really have this competition in the marketplace if the marketplace is being destroyed and shot up in many instances. How do we get at this problem? What's the road forward in your view?
We might be able to find a little bipartisan agreement if we acknowledge something that both parties at different times have acknowledged, which is that marketplaces of ideas or any other kind of marketplace only function when there are rules and when we abide by those rules. You can't have a marketplace if bandits keep shooting up the marketplace. And this is why it's so important to identify where the threats to the marketplace have really been coming from. Have we seen left-wing speakers shouted down on campuses? Have we seen left-wing events interrupted by terrorists? Rarely so, if ever. I can't think of an occasion. I am amused that Senator Durbin began by warning against pointing to one side or the other, making this a partisan issue, before beginning one of the most partisan invectives that I have ever heard. But I'm not even opposed to a partisan invective here, because I think it is very important that we identify where the threats are. I think any honest Democrat even would have to acknowledge, as the Atlantic magazine did, as even CSIS has acknowledged, that the threats today to the free marketplace of ideas come from the left. And so, in order to restore the open marketplace of ideas, the healthy exchange of ideas, essential to our self-government, we must regulate where the problem is. And today, the problem lies on the left.